that maybe we should actually take this stuff seriously, and yet, why is it so darn hard, right? So a lot of us are just like, oh, well, because I'm lazy. I can't make myself do exercise. Oh, I've got no willpower. I can't eat healthily. Oh, I can't. We've got these reasons from this sort of default societal pressure about why we are struggling to stay on top of all of the stuff going on in our lives. We don't kind of feel like we're coping, and then we feel like that's a failure. What's wrong with us? Why can't I cope with all of this stuff? So I guess I want to talk about the reasons why so many of us are struggling, and so many of us are feeling like it's impossible to stay on top of your well-being. So firstly, you've got external factors, the often overlooked ones, right? We've got what's going on at work today, what's going on in your life today. We've got all of those things, but we've also got the world happening around us. We've got socioeconomic factors, you've got changes in cost of living, you've got politics, you've got climate change, you've got wars breaking out in places that we just didn't see coming and feels a little bit like the end of the world. And if you are somebody who cares a lot about the environment or climate change, or you're worried about, the geopolitical landscape, that isn't going away because you're currently thinking about work or you're in the workplace. That's still there. That's still taking up your emotional resilience, focusing on that and trying to stay on top of that. So we're not just dealing with what's going on for you right now that you're consciously stressing about. You've got all of this other compounding variables. And unlike in days gone past where, you might pick up the newspaper in the morning and be bombarded with some bad news once in a day, but then kind of move on from it. The rest of your day goes on and you can't re-engage with it. We are bombarded with it every minute of every day because you've got your phone in your pocket and you can't escape it. Your social media platforms are full of it and people's opinions of it. It's never going away. We are bombarded with the world around us. Secondly, kind of the job factors. All right, why else are we struggling with our resilience? Well, turns out our job is quite tough. Really? Nah, you guys just play with puppy and kittens all day, right? Like, surely that's a nice job. Easy. Yeah? Yeah, no, obviously not. So we've got all of the stress that is a normal job, because it's work and we have to do things and we have to get along with people, and we've got frustrating IT systems and we've got admin that doesn't work and our boss isn't always on the same page as us. And then we mix love and money into one conversation. We have to work with people's financial scenarios as well as their emotional attachment. And that is never going to be good. If you're in a veterinary setting, the love and money conflict is your life. And if you're in an animal shelter setting, it's slightly different because it's the organizational finance conflict. But it's still the same conflict, isn't it? Is what's the best thing to do for this animal versus what can I do for this animal realistically within the resources? And then if I spend all this money on this animal, what other animals can I not save because of that? It is still animal welfare versus money. And that's not going away. We can't make that go away. That is the reality of our job. We also have our personal factors, okay? So that means what's going on for us right now. What's our personality? Who are we? Are we in the midst of a separation, or are we grieving, or we've got young children, or we're caring for elderly parents? Have we got, cost of living challenges? Are we in the middle of a really stressful time? Are we studying on top of what we're doing? What's going on for us in our lives that we're bringing to our work? Because those two things are not separate. And how are we being impacted by life? Because life happens. So the personal factors are on top of your job and the world around you. And the one that's most overlooked and that we don't really talk about enough is the fourth phase, which is identity factors. Now, identity factors, some of which we do talk about. So a really good example of this is our tendency in our profession to be high on the perfectionist and type A personality scales. Perfectionism is strongly correlated with feelings of failure and feelings of lack of fulfillment, and that can often lead to a higher risk of burnout. So there is no doubt whatsoever that perfectionism is a link. And if we are a profession prone towards that, then that's important to be aware of. But we're going to touch on that specifically later when we talk about some of the unhelpful thought patterns. One of the ones that I want to touch on today, because it's one that we don't talk about so much, is the identity factor of what they call the calling effect. So it is not uncommon in our profession for people to have always felt like they were going to work in our profession, right? So, hands up, honestly, who, when they were asked when they were 6 years old what they were going to be, said some version of working with animals, whether that was be a vet, whether that was work in a zoo, whether that, whatever that looked like. Most of us, as a stereotype, feel that this was what we were meant to do. We always felt that way. And what that means for many great things, but also for the worst version of the better or worse, is that our identity and our sense of self can be quite wrapped up in our professional success, right? So when we have the calling effect, it means that when we have our professional identity, it's intrinsically linked to our personal identity. And what that means is that every time we have a challenge to our professional identity, and that means either, we couldn't save the animal, or we didn't do a good job, or maybe somebody had to have a performance conversation with us or call us out on something, or maybe we messed something up in a case, or maybe we got some poor feedback from a client. Those things are all hurtful, and they're all, of course, upsetting for anybody in any situation. But when your professional success is linked to your sense of self and your personal identity, negative feedback from a client isn't a professional issue. It's a core identity issue. And so every time we have these challenges to our sense of professional success, we actually have to challenge our entire sense of self. We have to re-go through this sense making and emotional responding to a new version of ourselves. So there's some really interesting research on this. And I really, if this is something that interests you, I would really encourage you to have a look at Graham and Maitlist. They do this really good kind of visual thing for those that are following along on video, not on audio. You've got it in front of you there, but of course it's so detailed. You really want the time to sit down and work it out. But what it really shows is that there's kind of 3 different pathways of the way that people typically respond over time to constant challenges to their professional identity, and whether or not they thrive versus whether or not they sort of flail tends to be where that pathway starts in terms of their initial sense of self. And those people who believe that my core purpose on this universe is to help animals, and that I have a kind of a certain special something about me that makes me good at that, you can guess where this is going, right? Whereas people who come into it with I want to do a good job, I want to learn a lot, this will be interesting, I can't wait to see what happens. Every time they get challenged, they can actually grow and develop and take those things on. So you can start to see why it's not quite as simple as just, work's hard. All of these things impact us. And if you are somebody who identifies with the calling effect, if you are somebody who has a lot of personal things going on at the moment, and if you are somebody who cares about the world around you at a major basis and doesn't do the head in the sand approach to what's going on geopolitically, you can see why a lot of us are at a tipping point.